No, it works. We are double mic'd. One is for Zoom and one is for our room. And I don't think you can hear me in the room though. Right here, how's that? Technology.
Where'd Carl go?
He stepped out.
Well, we'll figure it out when Carl gets back.
All right, I will talk really loud for the moment. Hopefully you can hear. Hi, I'm Leslie. If we haven't met previously, we're glad you're here this evening to join us on a beautiful, beautiful, almost spring day. It's coming, so get ready. We're an all-volunteer committee here, and so I want to introduce you to those folks. We have Nancy back here, and Anne, and Grace, and Aaron, and Carl, who stepped away for a moment, but he will be back. And we have a couple who can't be with us this evening. So I didn't think about how many things I'd be holding as I talk. So bear with me. Anyway, who has not joined us for Green Drinks before? Raise your hand. We are glad you're here. Welcome for the first time. And then we have friends on Zoom because we always want to keep making our circle bigger. So hello to all of you out in Zoom land. We hope you can hear things okay. If not, let us know through the chat if you would. And we have two great co-sponsors, Duke's Ale House. So we hope you enjoy the food and drink while you're here. And then also Defenders of McHenry County. And they take care of all our mailing lists and whatnot. We are 15 and almost a half years old, so we've been going consistently. But this all started way over across the pond for those of you who are new. Across the pond meaning England, where some folks sat down and realized other people were talking about the environment, and they thought, we should gather more often. So now there are more than 400, and I found it out today, more than 430 in the world. This is an international thing, and it's really cool because this time we have some new international places joining us. One is Sault Ste. Marie in Canada. So give a good cheer to our friends in Canada. Yeah. And we have two in Ecuador, so bear with me here. One is Quito, the capital, I believe, right? And the other one, I practiced, and it's Guayaquil. Guayaquil, maybe that's it. It's probably a big city. Yes. So yes, and both are just starting up. So that is really cool. Then we have a few in the US. One is Huntington, Indiana. Anybody been to Huntington previously? No? Okay. Longmont, California, or not California, geez, Colorado, right? There we go. Sorry, not reading my writing very well today. And Charleston, West Virginia. Yeah, okay, there we have them. So they're joining us, and it's a great thing when together we're working to build our environmental community. That's what we're working on here. And then we want to educate our communities. So we have a great speaker again this evening. And then at the end, we always share some announcements about the community. So if you have something that pertains to the environment, we'll invite you to get up for a minute. You don't have to talk the whole minute, but we'll let you if you need to. And let us know who you are and what it is. And then we can tie everybody back in for being involved, and that's the goal. So next time, because we always gather on the first Wednesday of the month, we have our speaker right here. So Nancy Gahala, would you mind getting up and telling us about that if you can reach this?
Great. I would love to. Thank you so much, Leslie. Got it all. Hi, I'm Nancy Gahala with the Wildflower Preservation and Propagation Committee, the WPPC. And I will be here next month to talk about rain gardens. So rain gardens are beautiful. It's wonderful to have pretty flowers, but we also want to talk about the science behind a rain garden and why it's a citizen solution to helping our water supplies. And that will make Scott happy.
All right, thanks. Thank you very much. We will look forward to that. So that will be Wednesday, April 2nd, right back here. And then we have Scott to introduce a really wonderful federal employee. Please give her a hand already because she's still working with us, right? Very important. And we're grateful that you would come tonight. So Scott, if you do the honors.
There you go. Hold on that. So, hello, everybody. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Scott Kuykendall. I'm the Water Resource Specialist for the McHenry County Department of Planning and Development. And I help oversee our scientific research into water, help set public policy to protect our water, and then do lots of public education and outreach. And in my job, I'm very fortunate to work with a lot of great scientists. You know, I get to do things. I don't have to do things at work. I really get to do things. I take my job very seriously, and I'm honored to serve the citizens of McHenry County. And in 2006, we were growing exponentially at that time. And there was a lot of concern with the county board and others as to whether or not we had enough water to support that growth. So a major study was done in the county called the Groundwater Management Plan. And it identified that we actually have very good water resources in the county, but they are finite. And they are also vulnerable to contamination. So we really need to understand how our water works, where our water comes from, how the different aquifers work. And so since then, we've actually been doing more in this county to understand our water than any other county in the state. And one of the great honors of my job is actually working with Amy Gahala. Amy is a scientist. She's a hydrologist, or excuse me, a hydrologist, geologist. Hydrologist with the US Geological Survey. And Amy, for many, many years now, has been running a network of groundwater monitoring wells that we have in the county. We have a very robust groundwater monitoring network. So municipalities, they have to monitor water and water quality that they're providing, but we have over 30 to 40,000 private wells in the county, depending on shallow sand and gravel aquifers for our drinking water. So this groundwater monitoring network, every 15 minutes, it's monitoring, measuring water levels in our aquifers, and then transmitting that data up to US Geological Survey satellites, and then they maintain that data for us. And Amy has helped create a wonderful interactive website that anybody can go to, and you can pull up data in each of our monitoring wells since 2009. So you can see how the different aquifers in the county rise and fall with changing weather patterns. And there is a natural rise and fall. Water is constantly moving. But we are really getting a better understanding of how the different aquifers work, which aquifers have higher capacity to support growth, which ones do not. And but you need that continuous data in order to understand that. And then we are also using that monitoring well network to understand the water quality. So every 10 years, we're going to the wells throughout the county, collecting water samples and monitoring the water quality. That way we can see trends over time. If we start to see changes, that'll give us the opportunity to prevent further damage to our aquifers. A big part of what I talk about is water is necessary for all life. Every living thing on the planet needs water to survive. Because it's so important for survival, it is our #1 economic driver. Without water, without safe, reliable, and affordable water, people are not going to invest in homes or businesses. So our water is our #1 economic driver. So this affects everybody. And you need real sound science in order to make decisions around our water. And so Amy is the scientist that's been working with us, and she's going to be talking about one of the studies that we've done with our monitoring well network. And I do recommend anybody who's interested in water should check out the website that Amy helped put together. It shows a map of the county, where all the wells are located, and all you have to do is click on one of the wells and it'll pull up a graph showing water level changes over time. It is so easy, and we have Amy to thank for that. So just go to McHenryH2O.com, not McHenry H20, but McHenryH2O.com, and I've got all the links to the studies that we've done, along with basic instructions. It couldn't be easier. McHenryH2O.com. So I'd like to introduce Amy Gahala and let her talk about the PFAS study that we've done. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott.
You bet.
Yeah. All right. Can everyone online and hear me okay? Okay, good. I'm not used to holding a mic. This is going to be weird. All right. So today, yes, I'd like to talk to you guys about PFAS detections in the ambient groundwater, at least in McHenry County, and in your drinking water supplies. I am doing something a little bit different. I'm merging 2 different presentations I have given into one. So this will be interesting, okay? How would I advance? Okay. Then can you go to the next?
Oh, you can go.
That's
Got your wish. Oh, there we go.
okay. So who here has at least heard of forever chemicals? Yeah. So, okay. So most of you have heard of them. And polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFAS is what you've heard of them as. It's a broad name for the man-made industrial chemicals used in things from industrial facilities. They've been used in firefighting training facilities and firefighting foams, and also in building and roofing materials, and many, many countless materials that it's been used in. The reason why it's been used, if you see the two organic chemical symbols there, we have PFOA, perfluorooctanoic acid, and perfluorooctane sulfonic acid, PFOS. These are the two most widely used PFAS compounds and made in the US. You'll find that those are most prevalent and often seen. And the reason being is it's an 8-carbon chain attached to fluoride. So fluoride's attached to each one of those carbons. It does not exist in nature, so nature has no way of breaking it down or eating it. It was discovered by accident back in the 1960s, so it's been around a long time. These chemicals are oil and water repellent, so most chemicals are either or. These are both. This makes them very useful, but also extremely persistent and able to bioaccumulate and biomagnify. So if you have your Teflon pans or carpets that are stain-proofed, keep in mind that those things might have PFAS containing compounds in them. Why are we concerned? Well, there's been a number of studies. Actually, this is one of the most commonly studied compounds is PFOA and PFOS. But there are several studies associated with PFAS exposures that show adverse health effects such as preeclampsia, reproductive and developmental disorders, cancers, kidney disorders, liver disease, and even increased body fat. So more things adding to our problems. All of this has been shown to be carcinogenic at the parts per trillion level. And part per trillion is 1 ounce in 7.5 billion gallons of water. Or I'm a pool cleaner and I have to clean 500 pools, each with 20,000 gallons of water. 1 drop spills out, that's 1 part per trillion. That means that even at that low of level, they have confirmed carcinogenic effects at that low of level because it bioaccumulates and biomagnifies. And that's generally the longer chain ones, but more are being studied. Since it's been around since the 1960s, they've discovered that the PFAS have been detected in the human blood and wildlife and pretty much everybody. So everybody has some amount of PFAS in their systems, and it's also been detected in breast milk. So now how does it get into your drinking water supply, or how does it get into the environment? So here's PFAS according to the water cycle. You can have direct releases into the environment through the firefighting foams when they're at their training facilities, or if there's been a fire, then they could add it there. They can have direct releases from industrial facilities that are producing these chemicals. Landfills might also receive a lot of these PFAS-containing products, and that develops a leachate. So your lined landfills will have leachate collections that go to the wastewater treatment plants. And so now your wastewater treatment plants have the PFAS and they're trying to treat them, but it doesn't treat them all. So it goes and discharges into the surface water. And sometimes surface water will also leach into the groundwater. And you'll also have some biosolids containing PFAS that will also be distributed to the soil and farmland. So that's being uptaken by your plants. Your animals that you're eating are uptaking this PFAS, and you're now consuming that. And again, it's bioaccumulative, all that good stuff. It can leach directly into your groundwater through your septic tanks too, because what you're eating, what you discharge from your body will go through that. And so this is the PFAS water cycle. It's everywhere. It's in precipitation. We found it on the mountaintops of Colorado. We find it in the ice caps too. So it's just everywhere. It's been around a long time. How are we cleaning this up? There are existing technologies, okay? However, those things are things like absorbents, like your activated carbons and your resins. incineration, there's surface activated foam fractionation. That's a newer technology that's relatively cheap to all these other ones that I'm mentioning, like plasma-based oxidation, electrochemical degradation. Think really, really expensive. All of these treatment facilities have to add these things to their treatment process, and it's expensive. Plus, I have The Cat in the Hat. Anybody ever read this book? With the cat in the hat comes back. Okay. Right. So when the cat in the hat in the book, when the cat in the hat comes back, there is a pink spot on the mom's dress, and then the cat gets it on everywhere he tries to remove the pink dot. It gets pink somewhere else, like on the tub and on the walls and everywhere. So that's pretty much PFAS. You can't get rid of it. Whatever you try to remove it from, it gets on the thing you tried to remove it from. Even incineration will potentially put stuff up in the atmosphere. So that's where it's a problem. So there are emerging technologies that they're in development, but they're not in full scale, such as microbial degradation. They're working on genetically modifying microbes to catch up to what we need them to do, to eat things and biodegrade things. There are also reagents that they're looking at, that they're creating to help break the PFAS carbon fluoride chain. That is a strong bond, trying to break that down into benign reagent or benign compounds. Okay, we did not have a federal MCL until April of 2024. So only very recently did they start with regulating PFAS, and only 6 compounds out of the 4,000 are regulated. They did that because these 6 compounds are the most prevalent. They're the most widely used. They also have the most associations with negative effects or health impacts. So they're the most, like I said, the 2 most common ones, that perfluorooctanoic acid and perfluorooctane sulfonic acid. Those are the 2 most common. That MCL has a 4 parts per trillion level. And the other 3 or 4 have a 10 parts per trillion level. That's perfluorohexane sulfonic acid, perfluoronanoic acid, and they also included the Gen X chemicals, which are all the replacement chemicals, the new shorter chain. So instead of 8 carbon and fluoride chains, it's like 6 or less. So they included those 2 just on a safe side. They also included something called the hazard index. So if you combine all of these, does it exceed a quotient of 1? If it does, then it's enforceable level to clean it up. Yeah, MCL is the maximum contaminant level. That's what EPA uses to define. That's the maximum level at which a compound concentration should be at, where there's no known side effects or adverse effects. Okay, so just real quick, these are the 2 titles I'll be talking about today. Today is talking about the data release that we did. That is a reconnaissance of the per and polyfluoro PFAS compounds in McHenry County, looking at both their groundwater at selected sites and at 3 surface water sites.
So I had mentioned the groundwater monitoring well network. This is what they look like. And so a lot of them are on conservation district properties. This one is at the Soil and Water Conservation District office at Route 14 at Dean Street. And so it uses solar power to transmit that data up. And this is Amy hard at work.
Scott took that picture. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, I use it everywhere now. It's great. The other study I'll talk about is tying it to our drinking water. It's the statewide sampling of PFAS in all the Illinois community water supplies. So that I'll talk about briefly today as well. All right, here is the McHenry County Groundwater Monitoring Network. This is what Scott was referring to. This is the distribution of, there's 42 monitoring wells in total. 37 of them are continuously collecting water levels in real time. They've been doing that since 2009. And I'll show you the website in another show and tell later, but that's a link to this, not to this page directly, but that's a link to our database to find this. This is a map of our locations of PFAS samples. So we only went to a certain amount of sample locations, particularly because PFAS sampling is expensive. It's about $500 a pop. So all the reasons too is we looked, so we located the areas or the locations that had likely vulnerabilities to PFAS. And we used our 2010 water quality data analysis to determine where to go. And those was looking at an analysis that determined whether the sample potentially had sewage in it or chloride mixes or road salt or things like that. So we used previous data to inform us on where to sample. So 19 monitoring wells were sampled. 3 surface water sample sites were also collected for PFAS sampling. This was all done in 2020, so I was out there collecting a lot of these samples, but they weren't analyzed until we finalized the methodology for analyzing PFAS at our National Water Quality Lab. So water quality control samples were also collected. Then I don't know. It's cutting off some of my screen, but this is just talking about the number of detections that occurred in the McHenry County. Thank you. In the McHenry County study, so 16 out of the 19 groundwater monitoring wells did have detections of PFAS, and all three surface water sites had detections. No PFAS were detected in the blank samples. There were instances of certain PFAS compounds that were detected in one, but not replicated in the duplicate sample. So that's probably owing to the low parts per trillion level and the difficulty of getting that to be repeated. The other difference is there were sometimes at one point there's a 36% difference in the concentrations that was detected, again, owing to the low concentrations. So expanding a little bit more on this screen that you probably can't see is the total number of PFAS detections in the McHenry County wells. The one with the highest highest number of PFAS detected was actually at that well that you saw me standing there collecting in that picture. Mm-hmm. That was at Wood 0801. And that was really surprising because that is our deepest well, one of our deepest wells. So I'm still skeptical as a scientist, okay? That's just our nature. So I'm a little skeptical about that one. If you noticed on this other slide or other half of the slide where you see the well depth relation to the number of PFAS in the well, generally the higher number of PFAS, the shallower that well, with the exception of that Wood 0801 one, that one deep well. That's kind of messing with our data here. So we do want to go back and confirm some of these detections to see just what is there. So I'm going to talk about the detections, but tie it back to what is currently regulated according to the US EPA MCLs. So PFOA has a US MCL, that maximum contaminant level of 4 parts per trillion. And 9 out of the 19 sites had exceedances of this MCL. And the highest one was again at Wood 0801. And there are a couple of other locations had greater than 4 parts per trillion throughout the county. PFAS, this is going to break it down into 2 different types of PFAS, PFOS. PFAS linear and PFAS branch, which is going to be on the next slide. Linear this is differentiating between the differences in manufacturing of this type of compound. And this process has led to variations in these isomers of PFAS. And it tells us something about the fate and transport. Okay, so this PFAS linear is stable and persistent, and it is much more resistant to degradation. So we do see it in a number of sites. It exceeds the MCL in 2 sites, but is about half the MCL in 4 sites. So there are a number of locations that have it, and you compare this to the next one, the next PFAS, which is branched, and that one, the fate and transport of this compound, it does degrade more readily, and we only see it in the one. So maybe it was present before and it did degrade already. PFBS concentration results. Now this has an MCL of 2,000 parts per trillion, so much, much higher. The studies warrant that it's okay to be higher. They're yellow because they're not exceeding an MCL, but I do have them scaled to let you know where exactly they are elevated. What's interesting about this one, PFBS is a replacement chemical for the PFOS. So they started to phase out PFOS and PFOA in 2002, and they started replacing it with other ones. They replaced it with PFBS, but we're already seeing it in our monitoring well network at these locations. So I'm trying to understand, why do we see it at these particular locations? Is it going to tell us something about the vulnerability of the aquifer, or what might be there, or why did it get there, and why did it get there so relatively quickly? Another look here is at the hazard index. So looking at that hazard index and the combination of these compounds, do we have any exceedances? Good news, we do not. We have 0 sites that exceed the hazard index. However, we do have some locations that, at least one, this one up in Island Lake area, that 20.7 C, that one is not at 1, but it's closer to 1, right? It's a 0.59, and then others are 0.2, 0.3. So there's a couple of locations that are just to be aware of, right? All right, some compounds can break down, some PFAS compounds break into other PFAS compounds. So let's make things complicated, right? Oh, thanks. So, you know, again, the sources are from stain-resistant packaging and food products. And this one is just showing that there's no MCL for this one. I just pointed out because it can be formed from other compounds, and so you see it in some of the locations that had PFAS detections in it also, or from other compounds. So the summary of monitoring wells, here's the ones with the exceedances. So all the ones in the dark blue have an exceedance of an MCL for a particular PFAS compound. And then I'm just showing you again that well depth and the monitoring wells that had those exceedances. And you can see that it's the full range, right? It's 25 feet all the way up to 200 feet. You have at least one exceedance. So generally, there are a higher number of PFAS that were detected in wells near urban areas and septic tanks. But some locations have unexpected numbers, like the one at Woodstock. Again, I didn't do a thorough assessment of like where and why PFAS were detected. It's just kind of my educated guesses at this point. There are 10 monitoring wells that exceeded the MCL, and the depths, the ranges, as I said, was 25 to 202 feet. There are certain things that you can do if you're concerned about this that I'll talk about later. It's like that point of use treatment that, you know, reverse osmosis or carbon filters and activated carbon, stuff like that. I'm going to shift focus now because I think the ambient water just kind of letting you know what is generally in the McHenry County groundwater. It may or may not be in your drinking water supply if you have a private well. We don't know that yet, but it could be used as an estimate or proxy. The Illinois EPA conducted a study back in 2020. They collected samples from all the Illinois community water supplies, and they wanted to test for PFAS. At that time, there were no federal MCLs, right? But every state, many states, I shouldn't say every state, but many states, especially the ones surrounding us, were looking at their PFAS and looking at setting their own criteria. And so Minnesota had set their criteria, Michigan, Wisconsin, everybody was already setting their own state levels because the federal hadn't caught up yet. And so Illinois was looking at, okay, let's test to see what we have. Let's find out the occurrence, the frequency, and the distribution. And to make it as objective as they could, they did the sampling, they did everything, but they handed over all their data to me and said, please summarize, tell us what we have. And so it's a bit of an unusual thing for the USGS to do. We usually like to do all the sampling, but we checked all their protocol, and they did a good job. So what they did is they used the EPA method 537.1. It's a little bit different from the more recent approved one. This one only analyzes for 18 PFAS compounds. The newer method analyzes for over 40 compounds. So this one was available at the time that they wrote their quality assurance plan. So that's what they used. And they compared all of their results to their, at that time, their health-based guidance levels, which was generally, which were listed here for each of the compounds that you see here, where that PFOA is 2 nanograms per liter and PFOS is 14 nanograms per liter. Everything was analyzed at the minimum reporting level of 2 nanograms per liter. So the sampling plan, what they did was collect water samples. There are over 1,700 and nearly over 1,700 community water supply systems across Illinois, and over 1,400 entry points. A community water supply system could have multiple entry points from either groundwater supplies, surface water supplies, or both, and only active entry points were sampled. And it's important to keep in mind that finished water or treated water just before distribution was sampled. So this is getting at your PFAS results despite any treatment that they had added. And here are all, this is the Illinois, the state, right, with very little funding, and they had to go to all of these community water supply systems and collect these samples. And they collected unfiltered samples from that finished water into 2 250 milliliter polypropylene bottles, plus any associated water quality samples. They took notes on where they got it from, the entry point that they collected it at, and they also noted whether that particular, on that day, were they getting water from groundwater, surface water, or mixed sources at that particular community water supply. They also collected confirmation samples. So if the initial sample had a detectable result, they wanted to go back and confirmed it. So they took confirmation samples. And then sometimes that confirmation sample popped up a new PFAS. So then they had to go back and get another secondary confirmation sample to say, okay, wait a minute, what's that one? And they did that particularly for any result that had a, like the most common PFAS, like PFOA, PFOS. So there was determined, I'll mention too, that it was detected if the sample had at least 2 sampling events with 2 confirmed detections. So how many samples did they actually collect? They collected a total of 1,711 samples, and that includes their quality control samples. They collected 1,428 initial field samples from entry points at 1,017 community water supplies, 164 confirmation samples, and 33 secondary confirmation samples. And then also included in that is 86 duplicate and confirmation duplicate samples. A little bit about their quality controls. You know, they're legit. They took their, with each sample, they took the unfiltered field samples. They also had with it a field reagent blank. And anytime there was a detection, they ran that field reagent blank to confirm that that is not a cause of cross-contamination. They also measured things with precision and bias with a laboratory fortified sample matrix that just analyzes for interference with the groundwater itself. And I took samples from that, every 20 samples. So in total, they had 86 duplicate and confirmation samples. 72 samples had initial field duplicate samples. 14 of them had PFAS, and another 14 were confirmed. And then they had 75 of the LFSM type samples. And all the results showed that the precision and generally they were acceptable, they were precise, and there was no indication of cross-contamination or matrix interference. And anybody can look up their data. So this is the website that the Illinois EPA database has provided. It's an ArcGIS type map. You can zoom into wherever you want, click on what community water supply you're interested in, and it'll populate in a separate box the PFAS that were detected, the concentrations, and it'll tell you all the concentrations that were detected. And this is the summary of what was there. But I'll break it down for you. So PFAS by the numbers, right? So 7 out of the 18 PFAS were detected. There were a total of 359 out of a total PFAS detected were 359 out of 1,428. And there were 149 community water supplies that had at least one PFAS detected. The most frequently detected was the compounds of PFBS, PFOS, PFOA, and PFHXS. These were almost ubiquitously detected in terms of frequency and in terms of the highest concentration. The two compounds, the one that had 150 nanograms per liter, PFOS, and PFHXS, of 140 nanograms per liter, that was actually at one community water supply that they immediately switched that community to a different water supply once they learned about that problem. So yeah, the next two highest are there. So in total, there's about 18% or 1.3 million residents within Illinois that are served by a community water supply with at least one PFAS detection. So that's not really exploring an MCL, it's just the detection. Okay, it wouldn't be a statistical analysis without a box plot, so this is obligatory. So we have the most concentrations were less than, around 2, right around that reporting limit, and always usually less than 10. There are, of course, a couple of locations that had some outliers, but generally speaking, we have generally lower concentrations and lower overall detection. Another way to look at this is to look at concentration bins, and what this is showing is the PFAS, the compounds are broken up into their concentrations that were most frequent. So PFBS, PFOA, PFOS, PFHXA had the highest number of detections. I'm going to zoom into that one thing. Okay, looking at those compounds that have some sort of MCL that's associated with it, or a health-based guidance level. PFOA exceeded the Illinois EPA health-based guidance levels in all 68 samples because it just had 2 nanograms per liter. That was what was detected. And then the health-based guidance level for PFOA exceeded in 3 samples. That was at 14 nanograms per liter. And then at the PFHXS, that exceeded in 1 sample. However, that's for the health-based guidance level. This has been updated with the MCL. And let me see if this will pop up. Yeah, okay. So now the PFOA, that exceeded the MCL. Instead of at 68 samples, it's now at 16 samples because that MCL for the federal MCL is at 4 parts per trillion. The PFOS, that exceeded the US MCL at 26 samples. So instead of just 3 samples, it's now bumped it up to 26 samples. And then lastly, the PFHXS, that exceeded the US MCL in 8 samples instead of just the 1 sample. So as I mentioned, they did collect data that said where the water source was coming from. And they noted whether it was coming from groundwater, surface water, or mixed. So there were 1,333 samples that came from a groundwater source, and 114 of those had a detection of PFAS in at least above the minimum reporting level of 1. And then in surface water samples, they had 85, and 30 of those had a detection of PFAS. And in the mixed, there was only 10 of them, but half of those had a detection of PFAS. So the total number of PFAS detected above that minimum reporting level for groundwater was 282, 67 for surface water, and 10 for mixed sources. And just real quick as a sidebar, I made this slide that compares the McHenry County ambient network that we looked at, where we selected certain monitoring wells to look at, and these are the exceedances on the right-hand side, And on the left-hand side is the Illinois community water supplies, and just trying to compare a little bit, not directly, but just a little bit, just to see how they compared for the ambient water versus the community water supplies. And in general, there's certain locations that do kind of match up, and those locations that match up do have similar compounds and or similar concentrations. So particularly like at this, Crystal Lake area that has the PFOA 11.5, and then the supply wells have similar concentrations at 17 PFOA and 5.5 PFOA. So just kind of something to just glean or try to understand or explore further, but that's just a sidebar that I thought I'd add. The other thing that we analyzed is looking at, I mentioned that groundwater, surface water, and mixed. We wanted to determine if it was significantly different, because what seemed to me is like the groundwater and the surface water had different compounds prevalent in it. And we're trying to understand, is that real? And so a statistical analysis was run. And that determined that PFOA, PFOS, and PFHXA were statistically significant, had a difference in groundwater and surface water or mixed sources. So to explore that further, to see what that looked like on a map, is we plotted this in pie charts for all the groundwater sources. And so generally what you see here is that there's a wider distribution of the types of PFAS in groundwater. So you have about up to 5 compounds detected in groundwater for most of them. Whereas in surface water, there's less compounds detected. There's usually between 2 to 3 to maybe some locations have more, but generally there's more common, it's more common to see PFOA and PFOS in the surface water. And then mixed only had 10 locations, so it's really hard to really understand what that means. So, but that's just showing you the distribution of mixed. So the distribution of the PFAS in drinking water sources just goes to show that groundwater had about 9% of the 9% of the results showed had a PFAS detection, with a wider range of concentration between 2 and 150 nanograms per liter. Surface water was more prevalent. 35% of the samples had a detection, with concentrations ranging between 2 and 15 nanograms per liter. And then mixed had 50% had detections with a narrower concentration range between 2 and 4.2 nanograms per liter. And some of those differences could be because of the differences in water treatment methods, the precursor compound issue. Sometimes PFAS creates more PFAS. There are dilution effects in surface water sources because you get a lot of non-point sources entering into the surface water through runoff and various discharges, and just there's a larger water body size. And the groundwater system has longer travel time, so it gives you a little wider range of those concentrations, but those larger concentrations might be pointing to a point source that can potentially be identified. So in summary, for the Illinois community water supplies, they did sample over 1,428 entry points at active community water supplies. 7 of the 18 PFAS were detected in 149 entry points. There are about 18% of Illinoisans that are served by a community water supply system that had at least one PFAS detection. The most frequently detected were PFBS, PFOS, and PFOA. And they had this was all finished drinking water. So keep in mind that what is actually there at the groundwater sites or at the surface water sites is not currently known, at least from this report. This is all after it's been treated. And the distribution seems to be that surface water and mixed had more common PFAS detected, but their concentrations were lower, probably owing to dilution and non-point sources. And groundwater had a wider range of concentrations, but was less likely to be detected. So as I mentioned before, if you're concerned about this, you can first reduce the amount of PFAS you introduce to the system. Don't buy Teflon, don't buy waterproof stuff or stain-proof stuff. The point of use options you can also use for your drinking water is ion exchange with PFAS specific resin, activated carbon filters, reverse osmosis is mentioned, but it does use a lot of water. So if you have a huge system, it uses a 4-to-1 ratio for just 4 gallons of water, just get the 1 gallon that's useful to you. It seems rather wasteful. They do have under sink operations that are much smaller, that are a little bit less wasteful. And real quick, I would just, before I get to questions and thank yous, this is the website that was designed or created for McHenry County. And I'll leave these slides with you guys so you guys can explore them and click on all the links. But this is just today's data. We are going through a bit of a moderate drought in the area. And all of these red dots that you see here are just showing, letting you know at a glance that the water levels are lower than they have been historically. So they're historic lows in about the 5%, 5 to 10% range. So this is a bit of an unusual thing because usually we have a lot more snow at this time and that usually replenishes our water. We've had 3 years of less rain. So this will be an interesting spring. Hopefully it'll be wet. We'll see. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out. And each of these, this is where Scott was mentioning, you could click on these and it'll populate the entire record. So you could see the water since 2009, how it's decreasing. It'll also show you some other cool stat boxes so you could see and understand how it gets those red dots or blue dots, right? So
we've captured multiple periods of drought now, as well as a period of record rainfall. So you really do get to see the rise and fall. So it's fascinating to look at. I can't encourage people enough to check it out. And this is truly unique. What we have here in McHenry County is very unique, and you should be taking advantage of it.
Yeah, there's no other county that does this. There are some statewide level similar things, but they're not as they're not close together, right? So they're a little less useful. This one is at the county scale, so it's more useful to see what your resource is doing in the various regions, especially with the complexities of the aquifer systems here in McHenry County.
King County is getting ready to, they're trying to replicate it, but it takes time to gather that data. Single points of collection don't tell you much. It's that continuous data that gives you the real story. And so King County is trying to replicate what we've done here. And if you have any questions, you can always reach out.
Yeah. So.
You ever coordinated your wells with type of soils, like glacial till versus heavy clay?
Yeah, to some degree. So in the report that was published in 2016, it's based off of all the water levels from 2009 to about 2015. And in that report, I differentiate between so we differentiate not by soil, but like what the aquifer, the heterogeneity, the type of geology that's there. So is it confined, is it semi-confined, or is it unconfined is what the terms that we use. And it's not necessarily the soil, but it tells us a little bit about what areas might have water levels that indicate there's some connection between the surface water, but not the surface, between the shallower water and the deeper water. And some areas that have complete separation, where I have wells where, I don't have it up now, but a couple of wells that have where there's pumping at the deep level, there's evidence of it, but you don't see that in the intermediate or the shallow. So it's completely separated. So it's somewhat like that, yeah.
Thank you. Hello.
Yeah, it's for the people at
For
home.
the
Okay.
people at
Okay. All right. Question about the treatment. Can you tell us how much it removes from, like a charcoal filter, for instance, is probably a really common household filter. Is this getting all of it? Is it getting a fraction of it? And then distillation, is distillation at home removing all of the PFAS? And what about a distilled bottled water at the grocery store? Does a distilled gallon of water get plastic from or PFAS from the container or not?
I'm not aware of the plastic leaching any PFAS in terms of that. But in terms of efficacy, it does range, right? Like I think firsthand, it'll probably, the carbon filtration will remove a vast majority of it. But then as it ages and you get that red light to switch, you might want to switch because things will have less of a capability of removing the PFAS. So all of these things greatly reduce it. Will it eliminate it 100%? No. These are at the parts per trillion level, so it's very difficult to remove them to that level.
Yeah, the carbon filters, like your PUR or other type of filters that you have in your fridge, that's actually what I have. They got in a little bit of trouble because they were saying it removes 75%, and that varies so much from container to container. There's just no way that they can guarantee it from one to another. Generally speaking, it will remove around 75% of it as long as you're replacing the filter properly, but there's no guarantee. The number one way to reduce your exposure to PFAS is to eliminate your, the clothing and other types of things. A lot of manufacturers are looking at eliminating PFAS. So like I just bought Keen boots specifically because they have phased out PFAS from their production. Patagonia is moving towards 100% elimination of PFAS, but what you're going to see is they'll say no PFAS added. And that's because they can't guarantee that somewhere along the supply chain that it hasn't been exposed to PFAS. But a lot of manufacturers are taking this seriously and trying to eliminate PFAS from their production process. But it gets tricky. So PFAS and PFOA have been voluntarily phased out, at least in America. But you'll see packaging saying PFOA free. If you see PFOA free, they're saying, it's something that's already been eliminated is not in there. And so you should have warning bells going off because there's thousands of forms of PFAS. There are literally thousands of forms of PFAS, and we really don't know how all those interact. But the convenience of waterproof and nonstick packaging and all these other things are too good to be true, basically. And there is a cost associated with that. I think Nancy's next, and then I'll get this, Nancy.
The environmental Nancy.
I don't know if this is something you can answer, Amy, or maybe Scott can, but can you just speak at all to what PFAS do in the human body and why there's such a concern?
Yeah, that's a good question. As far as I'm aware, I'm not an expert in that level, but just suffice it to say that if microbes can't digest it, we don't have enzymes in our bodies to digest it or break it down. And like I mentioned, it's a very strong bond. That carbon fluoride bond is extremely strong. It's one of the strongest bonds ever existing. So it's difficult. Energy systems will only eat, like microbes and enzymes will only break things down because there's a gain for them, but it takes them so much more energy to break that down, then it's not worth their effort. So that's why it stays in our body for a lot longer time.
So then is it carbon? Are they cancer causing? Are they what?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different studies that are pointing to a number of different issues, like reproductive issues and liver disease. Like it's been associated with fatty liver disease. It's been associated with a number of cancers. If you want to watch a really good documentary of what it means, it's a movie, but it does talk about, there's also documentaries about it, but they talk about just the quantities, that high quantities, what it does for like the malformations and the cancers that it could cause. And I think it's a teratogen in some cases too. So what that means is your babies might have disabilities or malformations, right? So Dark Waters, I don't know if you guys heard that, but Mark Ruffalo is the lead actor in that. And they do a really good job of summarizing the concerns and what it means to be a directly down gradient of a PFAS plant. Yes.
Yeah, so it's highly recommended watching Dark Waters. It's a really good movie beside the fact, but definitely worth.
Good job it does, both as a drama, but also really
Right.
explaining like what this landmark case, and there was a guy whose cattle were drinking water that had the PFAS in it. Really phenomenal.
Yeah, so check it out, and there are a wide variety of health concerns, and we're still at the really the infancy of understanding this. The study that the county did, and I think this is important to make a distinction, is that we did our first study in 2010, and we were doing our second study in 2020. And over that time, I became more and more aware of contaminants of emerging concern, including PFAS. And so since we were already going to be collecting samples from the wells, that was an optimum time to collect the samples, even though we didn't have the sampling tech or the technology to really test the samples. We went ahead and got approval and funding to just collect the samples. And so that's why Amy, the data that she's collected, that's all we did as part of that study was collect the data. So all this other information that Amy is providing and her actually being here is all on her own time. And we are hoping to do additional follow-up on that. But that we just didn't want to miss the opportunity, since we were already going to be collecting samples. To go back and collect samples later would have been extremely expensive. We were already going to be in the wells collecting the samples, so it was just an optimum time, and we were able to get the support from the county board to do that, and that's why we have the
And
data.
a bonus feature to add on to that, we also collected bottles for microplastics analysis, and we have an NIU student currently out running or analyzing those samples on a device that can automatically quantify the microplastics that are in there and tell you the type of plastic it is. So it'll analyze the type of polymer that it is. You can give it a sample of what you're concerned of, and it will analyze how many of that is in there. And so the one thing I'll say is our samples were collected in plastic bottles because that's what we had as extra. This was like, hey, we're already here, let's collect as much as we can. So that's what we had as extra, because they give us like 1,000 of these bottles. I'm like, what am I doing with all these bottles? I still have a ton left, guys. But we collected in these samples, and so we can tell the machine to ignore that plastic. And so it's still going to tell us maybe what is in the groundwater despite the plastic bottle.
Oh, thank you. I'm going to turn around so people behind me can hear me, because I know how that is. So hello, y'all. My question is there opportunities for funding in the federal government? And is there something we can do as citizens? What can we do as citizens to help make that happen? And I have a second question that is really ancillary, totally different. But a while back, we heard a talk here about mushrooms and how they were able to eat up some of the bad things with plastics and whatnot. And I don't know how that fits in. So it's two very different questions. Sorry to throw two things on you at once, but the most important thing is our citizen solution so that we can do something as citizens.
Well, with my government hat, I cannot tell you what you can or can't do as far as that goes. But, I think, be an advocate for science. That's all.
Is there funding out? Is there potential funding out there that we can help to?
I wish I was a little more at liberty to say.
So as a county, we will be looking at opportunities to do additional sampling, but there's no guarantees. We're in a very unknown situation because there are a lot of projects that we were in the middle of working on where the funding is uncertain. So hopefully at some point it'll come together, but right now there's just no way to answer any of those types of questions. So.
And then the mushrooms?
I hadn't heard about that with mushrooms. I'll check it out.
Go back and watch the videos.
Well, with any of these, so that's actually one of the benefits of finally having federal standards, is that actually drives innovation. And so, as as people start to, because this really applies to the federal regulations really apply to the water treatment systems. It's not just in existence everywhere. That's who those standards apply to. And so we will have to figure out how to address that. But it's going to take a long time to scale up those technologies. And, those are going to be applied to points of service, not necessarily our groundwater, private groundwater wells. So no matter what, this is going to take a long time to figure out and implement. And so finding ways to reduce your exposure through the products that we use in day-to-day life is going to be the quickest way to address reducing your exposure.
I have two questions. The first is, so we're on a private well, and we have a reverse osmosis for the kitchen, just, for drinking and cooking. Is there data on concern for showering, other types of absorption that because the vast majority of the water we use does not go through the reverse osmosis. So what are the sort of health risks from that exposure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm only aware about the risk for ingestion.
Okay.
There might be some inhalation factors, but I don't think there's a lot of data on that.
Okay.
So ingestion is the key primary thing.
Okay. And then my second question, at the beginning, you talked about the data that's uploaded and is, sort of federally collected. What are there concerns about the availability of that data going forward, given the current sort of chainsaw to the NIH and other? Is that data backed up? Might we lose access to any of that data?
I don't know about that, but it's, they're even looking at, they're questioning whether we need stream gauges. So if that answers that, yeah.
That's a good question. I don't know. We paid for that data, so I think that would be an overreach. But that's one of the questions that
paid for it, so there's at least law.
yeah. So, but there's just so much uncertainty, and to be honest, it's not fair to really put her on the spot with stuff. So just not pointing fingers at you, but just as we are asking questions, try to be fair to Amy. Is her ability to answer questions is limited, and all of our understanding of what's coming is unknown. So just try and keep questions that we can answer. I'll get Nancy. Well, you've already asked a question, so I'm going to get you next.
Yeah, about 30 years ago, I lived in Crystal Lake, and the water was very hard. And after about 10 or 15 years, they cleaned it up, and we didn't need Culligan anymore. Then we moved to McHenry a year and a half ago, and their water is very, very hard, and it's affecting the chrome. It's affecting everything. Is there any relationship to the PFAS and the hard water?
That is a good question. I don't think there's a study that's looking at hardness and PFAS. I don't see why that would be an association, simply because hardness is determined by the groundwater and how long it's been sitting in the ground, collecting all those minerals that are in the rock. And so it's just been sitting there for a long enough time to collect and get, saturated with harder water is what they call it, but like more carbon, calcium carbonate and all that stuff. So it's an unfortunate thing. This area has higher hardness. Even the Fox River is one of the harder, it's one of the rivers that's with the highest hardness, and usually surface waters are low hardness. So it just tells you that that source of the Fox River comes from a deeper source, right? So it's just a part of the natural aquifer, unfortunately. And, the ion exchange helps to reduce that. Yeah.
Well, from what Scott said, it sounds like there are companies that are trying to reduce PFAS in their products, right? So going forward, hopefully we can count on maybe the amount of PFAS in our water going down, maybe. But I was just wondering, with all the landfills out there, does there need to be more done with landfills? Because the highest point in McHenry County, where you said the Soil and Water Conservation District building is where you got your highest numbers, right?
Mhm.
And that's fairly near the Superfund site where the old Woodstock landfill is located. So could there be some connection there? And does more need to be done to protect us from PFAS leaching out from landfills?
Yeah, and it depends on the landfill, because like the older landfills that are unlined, there's nothing protecting that leachate from just going down through and infiltrating into the groundwater and even to deeper parts of the groundwater. If there are lined landfills, meaning they've learned their lesson, they lined them, okay, that helps. It's an imperfect thing, but it does help reduce the amount of things infiltrating into the groundwater. They do collect that leachate, and as I mentioned, it goes to the wastewater treatment plants, and the wastewater treatment plant can't remove it, so it still ends up in the surface water. So yeah, it's a little bit of an issue that's going on right now. Landfills are, not all of them are required to test for it. I think with the federal regulation now we're able, the EPA is able to ask Superfund sites, or RCRA sites, hey, I think you guys have the potential of having or being a source of PFAS, so you should be sampling. So that a lot of that is underway right now to see what that, how much of that is prevalent in our landfills.
Thanks.
There's just one more thing that I wanted to ask that I wasn't quite clear of. So we know that this is in our drinking water, but I wasn't seeing the connection between the maximum like recommended allowance in the drinking water and when we ingest it, the maximum level that could cause harm. I'm not sure that's established, but can you say something about, an unfiltered source and general use? Is there any kind of recommendation or some way to think about it? Should we be filtering all our water? Or can you say anything about the relationship between those two things?
First off, it's not necessarily in all water. That's a certain percentage of the sites were tested
Yeah,
positive.
99% were below detection. Okay. So, I mean, this is, newspapers were somehow saying that there was 60% is going to be having PFAS. I'm like, where are they getting that data? Because I was looking at that, I'm like, that's not 60%, that's 11%, So I don't know what they were using to estimate that or how they were estimating that.
So it's more about knowing if your home supply might be contaminated and getting that continual. If you're out at a restaurant, it may or may not, but.
Well, and the cost of testing is exorbitant right now, and you're only testing for a certain percentage or a certain number of PFAS. So it's a long time before we're actually going to know what's in our water. So for peace of mind, you may want to have a filter that you keep in the fridge, and just try and limit your exposure that way. But like I said, the number one way we can reduce our exposure is by eliminating and not using products that have it. The first conference I went to blew me away because one of the highest level of PFAS sources is microwave popcorn. And that was a staple in my life. The bags are oil and temperature resistant, so that the microwave popcorn bags are laden with PFAS. And so I had to eliminate one of my favorite comfort foods.
That's the case today.
Yeah, and so I think McDonald's and others have committed to eliminate PFAS from their wrappers over time, but these are, you're going to have to do a little research on your own. I am working on a 2-page flyer, but it's proving to take me a little bit longer to get that done. But I plan on having that available. We'll have that up on our website.
I will point out just one irony, though. Like, you can filter it out of your drinking water, but if you're still eating fish, keep in mind there's a lot of PFAS in fish. And if you're still eating cows that pasture themselves on the biosolids land, you're ingesting it anyways. So keep how that PFAS cycle in mind. Yeah.
Yeah, you had mentioned these chemicals will repel both water and fatty materials.
Mm-hmm.
So phospholipids and cell membranes do the same thing. Do these chemicals react the same way? Would they like incorporate themselves in cell membranes? Is that how they get in the body?
That's a good question. I don't know the deeper mechanism like that. So there, that's your field, not mine.
There was changes in PFAS regulations, I think a couple years ago, was it?
Past year.
Which go into effect in 26, or they went into effect this year?
Into effect last year.
Okay. Were they sufficient according to what you've seen in terms of the restrictions that they came up with?
As far as sufficiency, I don't know. I think I guess it's hard to answer that because like, well, what does like an epidemiologic study say, but at least as far as the criteria, they did keep it low. I mean, 4 parts per trillion is pretty low. Most instruments can only detect it, have a minimum reporting level, which was at 2 nanograms per liter. That's a really difficult level to reach. That is very, it's extremely low. And in order to replicate that with a statistical level of confidence, 2 is the minimum they can do. They can't go lower without questioning the reliability of that data. So the fact that they have 4 parts per trillion, which is 2 more, is pretty good. The others that have, and the ones that had the 4 parts per trillion are the bioaccumulative ones, the ones that are known to be biomagnifying and bioaccumulating in the environment. Those are the ones that they had 4 parts per trillion. The other ones that had 10 parts per trillion or more, there's less data associating that with bioaccumulation or biomagnification, but it does associate even at those low concentrations as a problem. So if you look up, there's a lot of studies like the ASTDR, they will have a lot more like health cause and effect studies that you can look up. I mentioned the fish and stuff because the USGS did do a study of what's in the surface waters, what's in the fish, and there's quite a bit in fish. And it's all in the Midwest area. So if you eat fish, it's there. Yeah. And it doesn't matter. Yeah.
You mentioned ingestion and fish and food. We're looking at stuff like washing our clothes, doing our dishes, washing your hands, taking a shower. Are these ways where we can risk exposure to this as well? Is it as bad? What are we looking at with like ways where we can't guarantee that we can filter the water?
I think if it's contact, I don't think there's enough studies to say like on your dermis, whether it's penetrating that. I don't think it is. I don't think there's any data that suggests that it's a problem. I think the primary thing is ingestion at this point. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've been given the signal that we're out of time. So let's all thank Amy. And we'll have to have her back talking about microplastics and any follow-up studies. But I'm very grateful to have scientists working with us, both on a federal and a state level. We're very lucky to have them, and hopefully we'll have opportunities to work with them long into the future. So thank you very much, guys.
And we also want to thank Scott. Oops, one off. Because he made sure that this happened this evening. So really important information for all of us. And thank you so very much to both of you. You ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
We are ready for some announcements. So make sure you tell us who you're representing too.
So much. Hello, everybody. I'm Nancy Ganzior with the Wildflower and Preservation and Propagation Committee, and you've already heard that I'm doing a program next month on rain gardens. But what do wildflowers have to do with Star Wars? Does anybody know? I can't do that, can I?
No.
May the 4th be with you. Now you're going to remember the day, right? Our native plant sale is Sunday, May 4th. at MCC at noon. We will have a zillion varieties of plants. You're going to come and see me next month, and then you're going to want every plant I show you. And that's the place to get them and the experts to help you, tell you what to do with them. So I hope you will all come to the college, and I hope you will all come and see me next month. And I am a board member of the Food Shed Co-op. So please come and shop with us. We have sustainable local produce. So come and join us. It's a beautiful store. We are so lucky to have it in our community.
I gave you 2 minutes.
Thank you, Anne. You're the best. Do you see how if you're really nice to people,
No,
then
you had 2 different topics and 2 different apps.
thanks. And Marty will talk again, I'm sure. So who's next? I can carry it around.
Yeah, okay.
There you go.
Good. No, Erin, I heard you have.
That can't go. It's wrapping around the table.
Hi, everybody. Erin Kennedy with the Environmental Defenders, but I am speaking on behalf of Kim Hankins to let you guys know that MCC is planning their very first repair fair. It's scheduled for Tuesday, April 15th from 4 to 8. So we're hoping that you'll save the date for that. The Defenders are kind of working in partnership with MCC for promotion and helping get the word out. But we're also looking for skilled volunteers. So the repairs that they'll be doing at the fair are going to be clothes mending, kind of small bike repairs, small appliance repairs, as well as lamps. So if you know anybody in those skill sets, we'd love to have them be a part. You're welcome to contact me at the Defenders or get to contact Kim Hankins. But once again, that's April 15th. And then the plan is to also host another repair fair at the Green Living Expo in November. So hope to see you all there.
This is a trial, so we want to see if we can get people.
All right. Okay. Anyone else? Jacob.
Hey, my name is Jacob. I am with the Friends of Illinois Nature Preserves. I just wanted to say hi to you guys and let you guys know that we have some volunteer days coming up for restoration. We have 3 main areas that we're looking at in the county right now. We have Volobog, looking to get involved there. We have Kishwaukee Fen out in Lakewood. And then we have a few prairies out by Cary. Kishwaukee Fen work days are every other Sunday, including this Sunday. Volobog's every Saturday, and the Cary prairies, I believe, are every other Saturday. I have to look at that. I'm brand new to the position, and I'm happy to be here in McHenry County and see if we get some stuff done here.
And we're happy to have Jacob. Yep. I gotta set the timer for me. Hold on. There. I'm wearing my Defender's hat and to let you know that we have our annual auction is ending on Sunday. So these table tents are around. So if you want to use the QR code and last minute bid on some of the items that we have available, this is one of the main fundraisers of the Environmental Defenders. Besides donation, there's a place where you can donate to if you don't want to buy anything, tired of stuff, but there's a lot of fun things that are not tangible. So that's good too. Who's next? Anyone else?
I'll just do a quick one.
Okay, Scott.
I don't have a lot of specifics, but every year we do an annual event called the Water Forum. A lot of you have participated in the past. If you have not, I welcome you. We're going to be holding it on September 10th. So that's the second Wednesday of September. We hold it at McHenry County College from 5:30 to 8. We bring in great guest speakers to talk about water-related topics. We have all kinds of sponsors talking about water-related topics. And we have this quaint little restaurant called Duke's Ale House and Kitchen cater the event. My tagline is we want people to go home smarter, ... and fuller than they arrived. And we've been able to accomplish that. I think this will be 7th or 8th year. So in any case, September 10th, 5:30 to 8, McHenry County College. Hope to see you there.
Scott, can you talk about Riverwalk?
I don't, do you know the date?
May 3rd.
Okay, May 3rd, right before Star Wars Day. We're going to be, May the 4th be with you. The plant sale, yes. But we're going to be bringing a program called River Watch in. So Riverwatch is a way of monitoring water quality by looking at the organisms that are in that water. So fish, if they don't like where they are, they can move away. Macroinvertebrates don't have that ability. So the presence of high quality macroinvertebrates are an indication of high water quality. The absence of those species is an indication of poorer water quality. So it is a very, very certain way of measuring our water quality. And so Riverwatch trains people on how to do this, and then we'll be helping people find sites and monitor the water quality